and welcome to Ono, another chess podcast. Today I am speaking with Ché Martin, whose voice you may recognise from the introduction to this show. He is marginally better known as an Emmy award-winning visual effects artist. Ché then went blind in adulthood and took up chess. So Ché has a super interesting and unique perspective when it comes to chess improvement. I think he will have a lot of really cool stuff to pass on to you guys. And it was just a really interesting conversation with a man who is my friend, one of my students, and someone I'm really excited to introduce you to. I will also just mention that if you do enjoy the episode and you want to come and hang out with both myself and Ché, we are hosting a Zoom hangout on Friday the 20th of October, and it would be great if you guys could join us. You can do so for free. Simply sign up to my Patreon page on a free trial and you can come and hang out with us then. All right, thanks so much. I really hope that you enjoy this episode.
You're listening to Oh No, another chess podcast.
All right, let's start. Ché, what do you love most about chess?
I love being completely disconnected from reality for a large amount of time, generally. Like you can get so involved in chess that nothing else exists in your world. It's amazing, and few things outside of playing music or sex seems to be so absorbing for me.
Sure. I think I'm going to get a similar answer from a lot of people to that question, this idea that a chess is like fully encompassing and you can just sort of disappear into it.
Yeah, it just takes over your mind. It's kind of creepy sometimes, how deep you jump into it. Not necessarily always a healthy thing either.
Right. Yeah, sure. And for those of you who don't know, Ché is one of my chess students and we know each other quite well. But Ché, why don't you tell us, for those who don't know you, a bit about yourself, a bit about your background and a bit about your chess background as well.
Yeah, I'm 51. I went totally blind due to, really due to not taking care of my diabetes 20 years ago. Had to make a massive transition in life. I used to be a visual effects producer, supervisor, visual effects artist. Obviously, you can't do visual effects if you have no vision. So I transitioned from doing that work to teaching myself how to code, set up an audio game site for the blind. And only about coming up on 3 years now did I look at playing chess. And it's really weird because the time when I did it, a lot of people, were getting on board because they had seen the Queen's Gambit. And I read the Queen's Gambit, I think it was that late summer before it came out. I must have heard something about it coming on and wanted to check it out anyway.
So I say that would have been a cool coincidence that you just read the book first when it was yet to be a phenomenon.
Right. It had to have been something I saw. I just don't remember what sparked it. But as most books, the book is far superior to the miniseries.
Yeah, no, I used to be the same. I used to refuse to go and see Harry Potter films with my family because I was convinced they'd ruin the books. I've always thought books are better.
Yeah. I read all the books. In fact, that was the first audio book I ever listened to after I went blind. And it ruined me because the narrator, Jim Dale, is to this day the best audio narrator I've ever heard. He won like multiple Grammys for that work. It was pretty amazing. But yeah.
Wow, yeah. And speaking of awards, right, you weren't just a visual effects artist. You were an Emmy award-winning visual effects artist. Is that right?
Yeah. I've got the beautiful statue trophy they hand out. Not quite as big a deal as it sounds like. They have different categories for the Emmys, and the one I won was as visual effects supervisor in the news and documentary category. But yeah, I'm able to tell people I'm a Emmy-winning visual effects artist, and that and $6 will get you a cup of cappuccino.
Okay, man. Well, that's definitely a cool feather to have in your cap. So, so 3 years ago you decided to pick up chess. Why? Why was it just the book that got you into it, or was there something else?
Yeah, the not long after I read the book, I got a board, and then the show came, and I watched that, and then of course the pandemic was full steam ahead. So I started checking it out, and the board I got is a Braille board, which
Right,
means
yeah, because I think a lot of people maybe at home are thinking, well, if you're blind, like, how do you play chess? So maybe you can talk about the logistics of that for a minute.
yeah. So the board has raised squares on it for the black for the dark squares, and then the slightly recessed squares for the light squares. And then each square has a hole in it in which fit the peg in the pieces. So it holds them all in place, dead center on the squares. And then depending on the board you get, it's weird. Apparently some boards, the white pieces have a Braille bump on top of them, so you can tell the white from the black. And then some boards are reverse of that. And I didn't realize that my particular board was the reverse of the normal. So the first time I played with somebody sighted, my pieces, my black pieces were white and vice versa.
You're moving their pieces all the time.
Yeah, the way you do it blind, the best way to do it anyway, is for you to have your board as a blind player, then the other person to have their own board, because you're constantly checking and looking at the pieces with your hands. And that, that's not the best way for someone to concentrate while they're looking at their board, trying to visualize stuff.
Right. You're way touching all the pieces all the time. Right. Yeah. No, I can understand.
One downside of that, though, is like they can see your thought process in a way. They can see I'm checking this diagonal to see, if my bishop can get from A1 to D4 or whatever. And it seems to be a bit of a cheat for them. Although I have heard of blind players using that to throw people off, to make it look like they're looking at a particular line when they're not at all.
Yeah, but I think we've discussed this before, and I think it's kind of ridiculous that you don't have the option, at least in a tournament game, to somehow cover your Braille board, right? Because that's like your internal thoughts.
Yeah, I have not played in an actual tournament game, but I know people blind folks that have played in lots of them. And the way I understand it, the other person can see your board. It's up on the table. Your hands are moving over it. Seems to me, from the outside, at least looking in, it'd be a good idea to get yourself a shroud, to put on the front of your board so the other person couldn't see your thought process.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, but there's a lot of blind chess players out there, and they play in, sighted tournaments. There's a whole section in the rule books for when you play against a blind chess player.
Sure, yeah. And so, but you do have your USCF registration, right? You are tournament ready and looking for one, right? And because you had one booked, but you couldn't make it in the end.
Exactly right. Yeah, I've got a USCF number and all that official stuff. I just got to get arranged to get myself to a tournament or two. I'm in a fairly rural area here, so there's not a lot of chess activity within easy transportation at this point.
Right, but you've sort of taken steps to maybe change that, right?
Yeah, I went to Facebook quite a while back. I tried to see if there was interest locally in getting a chess club going, and got almost no feedback. It was kind of weird. But then this 12-year-old kid here in the community, in this county, I should say, started a chess club. And so I've been going to that and helping out. And unfortunately, so far, I'm the only adult other than a couple of parents that'll sit down and play a game with their kids and get crushed. I'm the only adult showing up, but man, it's a great experience. And these are some really wonderful kids. And they all love chess and they're very good at it. I'm okay when I have time to think, but as far as like playing a 5-minute game, oh man, it's a train wreck into a mountain.
Sure. Yeah. And I think, especially when you're having all the logistics of the Braille board and everything, I think it's harder to play the faster time controls, right?
Yeah, there's that. There's I'm mainly there to help encourage these kids and to teach them, what little I know about chess and stuff. And along with that comes, using algebraic notation, which they're not necessarily used to. So a lot of times, we'll spend a good chunk of time just going over that and getting that down. But it's amazingly fulfilling. You're helping out some really good kids for a good cause. Anything I can do to help get kids' faces out of those screens, I'm all about it.
Yeah, no, that's great, man. That's really cool that you're able to be involved in that and maybe get the chess scene going a little bit more in your area.
Yeah, I think there's a whole lot of closet chess players around. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, in the area I'm at, which is, like I say, a pretty small town, what's huge here is college football, American football, and stuff like chess just hardly scratches the paint. If the school systems, in my opinion, would spend 0.001% of some of their football budget on stuff like chess, I think it would be a real boon to the community. And I frankly, I love football. I love watching it. But there needs to be a little bit of a balance to that sort of stuff, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think, I think chess, more than just the chess on the board, has a lot to teach people, and not just kids. I think adults as well, right? Because we sometimes struggle with things. Chess brings things out in us that we maybe thought we were even over as adults. I know, like, for example, I know you've struggled with losing games, as we all have. Do you feel, by the way, at the chess club that it bothers you less?
To lose, you mean?
To lose, yeah. Or just generally, like, the emotions that go along with chess.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't mind losing at all at the club. It's just entertaining. And like I say, the purpose isn't to go there and win games. Now, if this was a tournament, I'd be taking it definitely more seriously and would be, throwing the chess board across the room and kicking the chairs and stuff. But yeah, with the kids, it's no big deal. But it's amazing, like you said, it brings up things we thought we were over. It's amazing how a bad chess game can just diminish the rest of your day. if it's a particularly bad loss, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I get that. And then I think a lot of the times, at least I can find myself just not wanting to play because I'm about to start my evening. And sure, I could play a rapid game and then maybe have a fine and lovely evening, or I could sit there thinking about why I played knight c6 on move 42 like an idiot and lost the game and just ruined my entire evening. Because just because you lose doesn't mean you're going to ruin your evening. But I've definitely experienced that, right, where it really does take over your mind.
Yeah, and it really depends on the nature of the loss. I think, like if I play well and then just kind of blow it right at the end, I can mostly deal with that. It sucks, but at least I know, all right, I can improve on those blunders. But if I'm just playing like just one bad move after the next mistake, it's a blow to the ego. But I've been examining something about myself, as chess will lead you to do as you meditate on things. I've been playing less against human beings online recently. And of course, 99% of my games are online. And I think a lot of it is the stress of playing with a human. And like, I have to cut a good section of time out of what's usually a busy day here to play a game, where if I'm playing against a bot, or whatever, or doing puzzles, there's very little stress involved. If I have to walk away from that game, or if I lose, so what? I don't care. And I think what's going on is my mind is like, all right, we can engage with a human and go through the stress of sitting here for an hour, 2 hours, whatever, playing a game. Or we can play with this bot where it doesn't really matter. And I think my ego is shying away from the human competition. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. You're like protecting yourself from the hurt of the potential loss, by playing a bot instead. Right. And you're like, well, who cares? I don't mind about that. So it's like I think it's just self-preservation.
Yeah. And I think at the same time, I know for sure the best way to learn is to play. And the best way to learn by playing is playing human beings better than you. That I know for sure. But playing these bots, I think, you tell yourself, well, I'm still learning, maybe at a lesser degree, but I am learning. And, we can convince ourselves of anything, of course, but, yeah, it just seems to be less stressful, but if I'm going to improve much, I'm going to have to get over that and play more actual people.
Yeah, I actually think that, first of all, I have a feeling that the pain and like the memory then like reinforces the lessons of that game a little bit stronger. But also, I think you try harder against a real human, right? I don't know that you're really able to give your absolute all against these bots.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And there's even two levels of that, like on Lichess, which is where I play. You can play against a computer, and if you do that against the Stockfish engine, I should say, if you do that, you can take back moves. And inevitably what will happen is you'll blow a move and you'll be like, oh, yeah, well, I'm going to take that back because 90% of the time I wouldn't have done that or whatever. You make excuses. Then there are these bots. And the one I've been playing is the Maya bot, MAIA. And I think I'm right on this. There's Maya 1, Maya 5, Maya 9, 3 different levels. And I've been playing Maya 5. So on Lichess, you can just look them up like another player. And it replicates more of a human style of play. It does make mistakes, but unlike low-level Stockfish, it doesn't just make a crazy, terrible blunder. It just won't be making the best moves. And it takes more time between moves and stuff. But playing that bot feels somewhat like playing a human, whereas playing the Stockfish engine just feels like, okay, I may learn, the opening sequence or something here, but it's 3 different levels, playing the computer, playing the bot, playing the human. And for sure, as far as being an adult improver, playing the human's the best way to go.
Yeah, I wonder as well if I'm sure Maya does play more like a human than Stockfish, but maybe that's also part of you convincing yourself that it is worthwhile to play the bot, right? Because well, it's kind of like a human.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. It all ties together.
That is the way, and it's good that you're able to admit that to yourself, because I think the chess improvement, the more I think about it, is more like it's more like therapy almost. It's like trying to admit you have these problems and that you do these things, and you're like, oh, I don't want to admit that I do that, but I guess I do, and I should change that. But yeah.
Yeah, I think the whole journey of getting better, I don't think you can do it if you're not willing to take a long look in a dark mirror,
Yeah.
Because you're going to have to check your ego. I don't care how talented you are. At some point, you're going to have to dance with yourself and recognize your limitations and weaknesses. And, by admitting those, you can work on them. But if you're not even willing to, admit those weaknesses, then you can't improve on them.
Yeah, and well, I hope it's okay if I talk about our lessons together.
Sure, yeah.
And maybe draw an example from that. But like even yesterday when we were working together, we were sort of noticing that you tend to have this, you have this tendency to be overly negative, I would say, about your position, right? Pessimistic about your position.
Right.
And I don't know if that's something you think you struggle with away from the chessboard or not, but it's, I think a lot of the times it's the things we struggle with on the chessboard we also struggle with in ourselves. And, being, not being able to see the resources you have in the position because you feel so negative about it can cause you to even misevaluate it, to evaluate the position as, -5. Maybe it's only -2. Maybe it's only -1. Maybe it's an equal position and you hate your position.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, man. I tend to be fairly cynical about a lot of things, and a lot of times that extends to the chessboard too, and it's really served no purpose. I mean, I recognize it, and I'm working on it, but when you're being negative about your position, you're wasting energy. Okay, you screwed something up, or you could have done better on this, but you can't go backwards in time. So lean into it, and do your best to improve it is the way to go. Much easier said than done, especially when your emotions are on edge. But I think I'm getting better at that aspect of it. And once again, a life lesson there, learned on the chessboard about yourself,
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I do think then, when we come back to playing with real humans, you're not actually experiencing that negativity unless you're in a serious game, right? You're not playing Stockfish and like berating yourself for your last move. You're just doing a take back, right? You don't care. So I think it's like a more value again for playing against a real human.
Yeah. And I was in the Lichess 45 league for a while. And for those that aren't familiar with it, it's a cool league. You play one 45-minute game per week with a 45-second increment, and they match you up with other players. But I was just getting owned. I think I was in for 2 seasons. I think I won 3 games, and drew 1 or 2. Other than that, I was getting killed. But I was playing people, at least 300, 400 points above me. And at one point I was just like, because you get too wrapped up in your rating number, as we all do. And at one point I was just like, screw it. And I just purposefully tanked my rating so I'd quit worrying about it, which helped. But that was quite a blow to the ego to get just stomped week after week. Having said that, I think it was good for my chess, though, because I was I did care about those games. I was deeply into them, and I did go back and analyze and annotate all of those games, So if it's just a matter of getting over the ego crushing aspect of it, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think that's like another cool example of like your self-preservation by tanking your own rating so that you don't have to care about it anymore, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting to me how these things show up in chess. So do you think you have changed as a person because of chess then?
Yeah, I do think so. I think because you catch yourself analyzing things in your life, the decisions you're making. And I think I've noticed myself calculating, well, if I make this decision, that'll lead to this decision and then this. And we all do that naturally, I think. But having done it obsessively on a chessboard, I think does alter your thinking in real life. And I would think, for the most part, it's a positive thing because it helps you, you get used to thinking analytically and going step by step and going over things just as you do on the chessboard. What do you think? Have you noticed in your personal life changes like that?
Yeah, definitely. I think, just to come back to something you said there, funnily enough, today, like me and my wife were having to make a decision about accommodation that we're moving into, and we were a bit worried about something. And I was like, well, let's not worry about it. Let's play it out. And I was just like reminding myself, it's like this whole feeder's not a variation, actually calculate. So I'm like, so let's play out the scenario. So what if we do this? What if we do that? But no, I wouldn't say I normally do that too much, although maybe today's the indicator that that's starting to change. But I think chess has changed me for sure. Like, it's definitely been like a mirror for me into some of my personality defects or quirks, maybe, to put it in a more positive way. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things I've been forced to confront, and maybe I wouldn't necessarily say I've changed them, but I've definitely had to confront them. And maybe if I didn't play chess, I would not have even noticed that these things were wrong with me. Maybe I certainly wouldn't have been compelled to work on them. That's kind of bad, isn't it? I'm not willing to work on myself, but I will if I'm going to become a better chess player. Forget being a better family member, a better father, or whatever,
Right. Well, on the positive side too, I see in myself a tenacity and a willingness to keep on fighting when things are looking a little bleak. So, it's interesting. Like you say, it throws a mirror up to your personality and who you are as a person, if you're willing to look at it.
Yeah, that's why I think there's so much value in analysis now. Like, I feel like that's where all my improvements coming from. Is like analyzing not necessarily the chess that I'm playing, but that too, but also the way that I'm thinking and the way that I'm making decisions at the board.
And one thing I wanted to actually ask you about, you'd mentioned recently you've been doing some puzzles with a physical board because you've been playing over the board tournaments and stuff more recently. Is that right?
Yeah.
So when I do puzzles, I have to do it that way. Unless it's like a pretty simple puzzle, which I can do in my head. I could just visualize it, which is a super important skill, I think, in chess, and one that too many people don't work on. But all the puzzles, the complicated puzzles I do, I have it set up on my board. So obviously that takes a significant amount of time above what you could do just looking at a screen and clicking on the pieces and stuff. So when you're doing it with the board, do you find that to be more valuable per puzzle because you've taken the effort and time to set it up? Or is it more for you? Is it more just getting used to using a physical board for the over the board stuff?
Yeah, I do think maybe I learn more from it when I set it up on the physical board, but yeah, it's more just about getting used to the 3D pieces basically, because I found that, like I said in my online to over the board episode, it wasn't like I just was struggling to move the pieces around in my head when I was looking at this 3D board compared to this 2D board. For some reason, the calculation was just like harder. And I felt like I'd regressed somehow in my calculation ability. And that went away pretty quickly. But yeah, but there's a frustration to it as well. And actually, I think this is a frustration that I've had as your coach as well. Is like one of the things I want people to do with their puzzles is to split it into pattern recognition work and calculation exercises. Pattern recognition being like super easy puzzles that you can solve very quickly. But obviously, I've experienced some frustration where I set up a puzzle on the board, and yeah, it might be from a book where 70% of the puzzles, 80% are really challenging for me, but then I just solve it really fast. And you're like, wow, it took me 5 minutes to set that puzzle up, and I solved it already. So that was always a kind of frustration for me that I wasn't, and we did try to do those like really fast blindfold puzzles, but I just don't think it was really working. And so my fix for you was, well, you just need to get really, really good at calculating. But yeah, that was a frustration. But like, how's that for you? Do you feel frustrated that you're not able to do the faster stuff?
Yeah, I do, because I recognize that at my level, which by the way is, I think I'm right at 1250 or something on Lichess. I'm still pretty low. I think my ceiling is considerably higher than that, but my floor is also considerably lower than that. As you know, I can blow away a piece like lint.
Sure, but you've beaten some pretty strong players. I don't think. I'm very curious to see how you get on in long time control games and tournaments, because I mean, you have played a few of these rated online USCF tournaments, right? And I think you performed much stronger than your Lichess rating there.
Yeah. If I have time to contemplate what I'm doing, I can do better than these short time controls for sure. Like in correspondence games, which is really almost a different game in a lot of ways. That's where I do the best, because there's no concern about, I can spend 20 minutes on a move. No worries. But yeah, getting back to the puzzles and the frustration there, I recognize that, the best thing or one thing to do is to go through a lot of puzzles quickly and just get those patterns down. And I just, I can't do it quickly. So I try to make each one count as much as I can. I'll go over the puzzle. A lot of times I'll just set it back up, do it again, just to try to get the pattern in my head.
Yeah, and you've done pretty amazing work with that. I think you are not my highest rated student, but you do have one of the highest puzzle ratings. So clearly your calculation ability is far above your rating. So well done working on that, man.
Yeah, I'm trying to do what I can to learn. And I read several different chess books. And one thing that occurred to me initially when I was reading some chess books is I was too focused on like finishing the book, instead of really bearing down and then learning what it was teaching. Just so I could say, okay, well, I finished the Amateur's Mind, so I've got all that information on to the next book. I really don't think that's the way to go. And I think it's just human nature to be able to, check that box and say, all right, I've learned that, so let's keep going.
And you want to revisit the Amateur's Mind and just go over that again and again until you feel like you've really absorbed it.
Right. Yeah. And even like the temptation is to like read one part of it, one chapter, feel like you absorbed it, go on to the next chapter, and I'm trying to make myself, make sure I've got what, picked up what the author's laying down. And for me and my memory, that usually means I have to go over it at least twice, which is fine. But I just had to teach myself that it's going to take you a while to get through this book, but that's okay, because as long as you are learning it, that's the important thing.
Yeah, I think that's a good attitude to have. And I think that's a very adult thing as well, that you can't just look at something once in chess, and at least I can't either. It takes some repetition.
Yeah, I'm going to grow up one of these days. I can feel it coming.
Yeah, and I think as well, it depends what book it is you're reading, but I also think like these strategy books, sometimes you pick them up, these sort of intermediate strategy books like Simple Chess, Winning Chess Strategies. They're great books, but they all, when you look at the contents pages, they're all pretty similar, if not identical. And so I think sometimes you just need one of these books to learn what the concept is in the first place. What is an outpost? What is an open file? Or why is it important? But there's, at a certain point, seeing your 30th example starts to have diminishing returns. At least when we're starting chess, when we're just beginning. Better to get some practice in than to learn about it again, I think.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And you'll looking up lessons online and stuff. One thing I've seen is there's an obsession with memorizing opening lines and stuff, and I really don't think at my level, at least, that's really the best way to spend time. As you and I have discussed some, but it's best to pick a set of openings and just stick with them. Learn what does and doesn't work in those, and go on. Because you can memorize 15 different openings or whatever, but are you really learning how to play chess by doing that?
Yeah, I think the answer is no, right? You still have to play chess when you stop memorizing moves.
Yeah,
for sure. So, just bring it back, we talked about, logistically, it's just a waste of time for you to set up easy puzzles and do pattern recognition work. So that's something that you maybe can't do. But is there anything that you do that you think sighted people could benefit from, that they maybe haven't even engaged with because they can see? Things like, obviously, the obvious one is blindfold chess, right? Blindfold visualization. That's something I know I could benefit from probably, but haven't done anything. So maybe you could talk to me about that. Do you think that's a worthwhile training exercise?
Yeah, I absolutely do. And I think it's a much overlooked and very important aspect. We all visualize, you have to, because you can't move the pieces around when you're playing somebody. But there's another level of the visualization that comes with just a little bit of practice. Like I said, my memory is just awful. But I noticed after doing just a little bit of work on trying to play some games in my head, doing puzzles in my head, thinking about positions, your mind will start to absorb that, and it becomes much easier pretty quick. I played the guitar, right? And when I was learning the guitar, I noticed that after practicing on one day, my level would be a little better the next day, more so than when I finished practicing. In other words, my subconscious had worked on it overnight, basically. It was an incredible thing to realize. And I think the same thing goes on with the visualization training. I joined a group for a while that all they do is blindfold chess. So what we would do is get on Skype and just play a chess match with no board, at all. And doing that is just a fantastic exercise in visualizing the board, and by being able to visualize the board, it really helps when you're trying to calculate different possible moves. I think it was one of the largest increases in my chess skills that I've had as far as, time put into training.
That's really cool, man. Yeah, I definitely need to get on that at some point. And maybe this is a ridiculous question. Do you think because you weren't always blind, it's easier to visualize just generally? And I'm curious as well, because I'm not even sure that, when I'm trying to play blindfold chess, if I'm really seeing the board. I'm not seeing an image of the board, but what does it feel like for you when you're actually visualizing?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Well, first of all, there's definitely two different types of blind folks, and I'm totally blind. It's as dark as the inside of a cow for me.
That's some metaphor, man. Yeah, carry on.
Going blind later in life versus being born blind, from people I've talked to, it's just a whole different experience, because your brain forms around that. Having to learn everything later in life is just a different, and frankly, I think a more grueling experience.
Yeah, I can't imagine, man.
But yeah, as far as the visualization, literally what I'm visualizing is a board with the pieces, as if I'm looking straight down on the board. So yeah, I would think, but I can't speak for those that have been blind their whole life, but I would think in some ways they're used to that space orientation. They're better at it. Mm-hmm. But I hesitate to say that's the case, because it's like people think blind folks have super senses of smell and hearing and stuff, and that's not the case. But what is the case is you focus more on those senses. It's not like we can smell like a wolf or anything. It's just that we pay really close attention to those smells. We pay really close attention to those sounds, and we're tuned into everything. We're not relying on sight to back up our information.
Yeah. Okay. So, because it's just interesting to me, because I've also heard about sighted people who cannot hold an image of something in their head. There's actually a name for it, but I can't remember what it is. But I remember I am David Pruce of the Chess Dojo. I think it was him anyway, was discussing how he cannot actually visualize at all. You just can't do it. And it's supposedly something that people affects 1 in 10 people. And so he can still play blindfold chess, but he says he does it almost mathematically. In that, it's if A1 is here, then on this diagonal, that's a 1, 2, 3, 4 up, 4 across, something like that. But I don't know. Interesting anyway. But for sure, something I want to get better at.
Well, that's interesting. Now that I'm thinking about it, maybe I do a mix of that, because, I worked on learning all the light squares, I know E4 is a light square and so forth. So a lot of times I do think of it in algebraic notation. I know that, if I have a knight on D3, then in my head, I'm thinking, all right, now I've got, E1 covered and that kind of thing. So yeah, that's a really interesting question, Ono. I'd be interested to know how other people are visualizing the board. I never really thought about that.
Well, yeah, please reach out if you have any thoughts on that. It'd be cool to get more of a sample, more of an idea of how other people do it. Weirdly, actually, I couldn't do any blindfold chess at all I think, before we started working together. But I send voice messages to my students all the time. And we're speaking about the lessons or their games. But I'm normally just walking around the house with my phone in my hand. So I am doing all of that from memory. So blindfold. So weirdly, I never did any blindfold training. But I'm like if I'm summarizing a lesson or something, I'll be like, so, yesterday we looked at that, that position where you played G3 after they played, Queen to G6, and maybe it was a little bit better to blah, blah, blah. And so I'm doing all that from memory, and that's actually helped me a little bit, I think. I don't know how much. I haven't tried to play a blindfold game since I started doing all that, but I should really do that.
Yeah, at first you're going to think, I'm never going to be able to do this as far as like playing a blindfold game. But like I said, it's amazing how fast your mind will start absorbing how to do that and filling in the blanks for you. I couldn't believe it because when I first started, I was like, all right, I'm going to give this a shot. But with my memory, I just don't see how this is going to work. But man, I was just amazed how fast it came.
Cool. And so have you got any good resources for people if they're trying to learn blindfold? Anything that's been particularly helpful?
Yeah, there's a podcast, Invisible Chess, where he goes over games and puzzle setups, and they're made just to do it for visualization training. It's really excellent. He hasn't released any episodes in a little while. I know he's going through some stuff on his end, but great podcast. They're all just a few minutes long. There's no ads or anything. And I'm not sure what the status is on that right now, but there's dozens of episodes. I'd recommend that. I'd recommend doing some of the more simple puzzles. Like look at the puzzle and then get it in your head and then solve it in your head. Also, one thing I've did early on, and I need to do more of it, is working on knight moves, where the exercise might be, for instance, put a queen on Delta 4, put a knight on Hotel 1, and then move that knight everywhere on the board it can safely go to in your head. Sounds impossible, but it's once again, you'll be amazed how fast you'll be able to do that if you work on it. Plus, you can do that kind of stuff anytime, washing the dishes, taking the dog for a walk, whatever. It's a pretty cool way to work on your chess, I think.
That does sound really exciting, the idea of carving out more chess time whilst I do the dishes.
Yeah, there you go.
But I honestly, like, this is such an interesting thing to me. Like, it shocks me. Like, when you say you're able to do that exercise, and I'm pretty sure I can't. Like, maybe I can, but I would be super slow at it. And, like, just the random skills that we accrue as adult improvers, I think I am ridiculously overly knowledged about rook endgames, for example.
Right.
And, to a point where it's definitely overkill. Like, yeah, maybe if I get into a rook endgame, maybe my rating goes up quite significantly. But there are also other factors, right? Just the things you know about rook endgames doesn't mean that you can now calculate better because you're in a rook endgame, right? Your calculation's still the same. A lot of other things are still the same, maybe even non-chess factors, like we sort of touched on. But yeah, so weird that we all have these random skills, right?
Yeah, but you spent like months working on your end game study specifically, right?
More than that, actually. I dedicated an entire year to the end game, but I spent, I think, probably 3 months, maybe 3.5 months of that specifically on rook end games. Which,
so that informs your game overall, though, right? Like for one thing, you're more confident heading into an end game. You're happy to get to an end game. You're even happier to get to a rook end game, right? So So do your plans kind of aim toward a rook end game if it's, headed that way?
That's kind of interesting. I mean, obviously there isn't a certain way that you can like look at a position that's maybe a more complex endgame and decide, well, if I make these exchanges, it'll be better for me to be in this same colored bishop endgame because of the pawn structure, or it might be better to be in the rook endgame because I know, hey, I can win this because, I know that, let's say, my rook's behind the outside pass pawn or something in some theoretical position. So maybe that's in some way helpful, but actually I think I needed to be careful because I felt like, well, I've studied the endgame. That was like my safety net thing. So I would often trade queens or overly simplify the position and give away an advantage I had just because I was like, oh yeah, but I'm more comfortable there. So I might have a better position in a nice middle game, but I'd be happy to kind of trade everything away, simplify the position to reach an endgame that is now completely equal, which is obviously not good. So I had to watch that I wasn't deliberately entering my comfort zone at the expense of my advantage, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's
interesting. I hadn't thought of it that way.
I try. I think I'm over that now. I think so. I'm not sure. I need to check that.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it in those terms, but yeah, we do head for our comfort zones in most endeavors, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think in chess you definitely have to watch that you don't head into your comfort zone at your detriment. Because I think people do the opposite, right? They'll avoid an endgame that might be good for them because they feel uncomfortable in endgames.
Yeah, and getting back to the music and learning guitar and stuff, you learn a few chords and you tend to aim toward playing music with those chords instead of learning new chords that would, allow you to do more. And I guess the same thing kind of applies here, where if you're leaning into something you're comfortable with, you're not expanding your horizons, so to speak.
Yeah. And actually, I think that could be exactly what's holding me back from doing blindfold visualization training, because I know it's going to be hard and I'm going to have to start from scratch and I'm going to feel bad at it, like a beginner again, Right. Yeah. So that's, there you go. There's something I'm realizing about myself from this episode. That's nice. Thanks, Ché. I'm going to have to play Gambits next week.
Yeah. I wonder of all the adult improvers out there, and then obviously, there's a lot of us out there, and then I realize most people don't have a whole lot of time to spend on their chess training. I wonder how many out there are like bearing down on these books and stuff, because I know a lot of players, myself, at least blind players, and they don't look at these books at all, and they're frustrated that they're not getting better. But I really think there's such good information out there. It is a pain and it does take time, but I think outside maybe of analyzing and annotating your own games, it's one of the best ways to get better quickly. What's your experience with your students as far as the books and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I always think like the knowledge is just going to come when it comes. You can learn that at your own speed. Like things like theoretical endgames or like strategic concepts, opening lines, you'll learn that when you learn it. And there is a finite, I mean, it is enormous, right? But there is like, I guess, a finite amount of chess information, or at least there is a limit to what an adult can reasonably learn in one lifetime. So yeah, I think at a certain point, everyone's going to learn that. So I always tell people, I don't really care what you're learning right now in terms of your knowledge. What I care about is that people are doing skill-based things every day. So like I said, I try and break it down into three things, which is the pattern recognition training, the faster, easier puzzles, and I have a few different what I think are optimized methods for people doing that. Then the calculation training, the slower, difficult puzzles that obviously you're doing, and then playing and annotating, and then being introspective, I think is the most important one, right? If you're playing at least one long form game per week is what I think is like an absolute minimum, but obviously the more you play, the better. And then spending a lot of time just being introspective, like looking at your decision making and looking at the way you think. But yeah, in terms of the knowledge, like I think obviously as Vol, like you do need to learn a lot of stuff about chess, but I don't think that you need to learn it quickly. Like it'll just come when it comes, if that makes sense. Like you'll pick up a book one day, and I think people should just follow their enthusiasm, because it's like in school, you know, someone makes you sit down and do maths every day and you hate maths. Yeah, it doesn't matter. You're not going to learn it. So I try and, you know, I got obsessed with rook endgames. I didn't study them for 3.5 months because I thought that was a good idea and good for my chess. I just got really, really interested in it to the point where I couldn't stop. And I was like, I should definitely be studying something else, but I'm just like absorbed in this material and I love it. And obviously I learned better as a result of that. You know, I'm really into sort of self-directed learning for kids as well. Like I would love my kid to be able to have that kind of education if it's possible within whatever system or country that we're in. Yeah, because, you know, I don't care if I guess it's like, well, maybe we can use the metaphor of kids, right? I don't think it matters if a kid learns to read or has a reading age of 5 at the age of 5. I don't think it matters if a kid doesn't learn to read until they're 9, because if by the age of 9, they're like, oh, you know, my friend told me about this story and I really want to read that book because it sounded like such a cool story. So now I'm going to go away and I'm going to learn how to read. They're going to learn so much faster, and it's not going to feel like a grind. It's not going to feel like effort if you then just, you know, it comes from a place of joy and enthusiasm. And so I would, I guess, encourage people to learn chess knowledge that way.
Yeah, I've got a friend who raised his daughter in a school system, sort of like exactly what you're talking about. So if you compared them with the public school kids at the age of, say, 7 or 8, it's exactly like you say, man. Their reading skills were behind because they hadn't focused on, all right, we're going to drill learning these words or whatever. But by the time they got to the 7th grade, they had just blown past the public school students because of their love and thirst for knowledge and gaining it. So that's been shown over and over again that's the best way to go for kids, man.
Yeah, don't work hard if you don't have to, Ché.
Right.
Yeah, but no, I think the skill-based stuff, though, can feel like a grind, right? Like the calculation and stuff like that. I do think it's important to build habits. Not everything can be super fun. But yeah, for the knowledge, at least, I do think that's the right way forward.
Yeah, right on.
All right. Anything else you think has helped you as an improving adult chess player that you want to tell the world about?
I think the annotating of your own games, I know people talk about that being important, but in my chess friend circle, very few people seem to do it. But it has helped me a lot. And what I didn't realize at first, it sounds like something, you know, kind of obvious, and you think, okay, I know I hung my queen in that game, no need to look at that. But if you go back and annotate it, you learn, oh, okay, I also made this mistake. This particular move here would have been better. And on top of that, or at least when I first started annotating, I didn't know what I was doing. It sounds like it's going to be obvious and you just put in notes about the moves, but it seems like there's kind of a way to do it where, and you helped me a lot with this, where you think about and write down your emotions about the move, what your thought process was, not just, well, this knight to, you know, D5 would have been better than this bishop to C4, whatever. Because getting to your thought process like that really informs your upcoming games. I think you realize, okay, I'm doing this thing again. I need to get over that. One big problem I've got is what I call spinning wheels, where I'm just calculating and then, okay, we'll go to the next piece and look at that and calculate and come back, and just wasting a lot of time. By doing those annotations, it really stands out, the mistakes you're making in your thought process.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that's definitely something we've discovered about your chess, is that when you're feeling that completely lost, or like the indecision, I guess, between a few moves, that you start to sort of just cycle endlessly through variations. Yeah, and that's something we're working on. But like you said, you wouldn't have been able to discover that you were even doing that, because normally your mistakes come on that move, right? When you're having the indecision. But like, if we just look at the mistake, you don't understand it's coming from the sense of, I don't know what to do. And then we can start to look at, well, how do we get you to feel like you have something to do, right? These planning tools and things.
Yeah, and another thing I've learned, at least with my personality, is when the game's heated up and you're trying to figure out what to do next, and your mind starts to whirl. If I just stand up, get away from the board, even for just 30 seconds, walk around the room for 30 seconds, sit back down, it's amazing how that doesn't always, but can clear your mind, reset things. And it seems very obvious, but for me, at least, like I said, with my personality, it has helped me in many games to get my focus back on the proper way to keep going forward.
Great. All right. Well, thanks very much, Ché. I think this has been a super interesting conversation. Is there anything you want to shout out before we wrap things up? You've got obviously your offline chess club. You've got the online chess club, the Dart Squares. Shout out to the Dart Squares. And your game company as well, Blind Adrenaline, which I do think you briefly mentioned, but maybe want to tell people a bit more about.
Yeah, I've got a audio game site for the blind called blindadrenaline.com. And that's also my email address, blindadrenaline@gmail.com. And if there's any blind folks out there looking to get into chess, if you know some blind folks that would like to know more, feel free to give them my email address. And I'm sure Ono will put it in his notes for the podcast, but it's simply blindadrenaline@gmail.com. I'm more than happy to talk to anyone that wants to check it out. And you can get in really cheap. These boards I've been using for almost 3 years now are less than $30 a piece. So, that's really all you need.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for your time, Ché. I really appreciate you coming on. I think this has been a great episode.
Thanks for having me, Ono, and congratulations on the podcast, man. You're doing a great job with this. And anybody out there looking for an excellent chess coach, well, here he is. So go to theonozone.com and get signed up.
Thanks, man. I'm sure I feel so uncomfortable with that stuff. Yeah, I'll bombard people with it after the episode. So let's pass things over to her.
Right on.
Thanks, Ché.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Yara. I'm Ono's wife, and as announced, I will be bombarding you with promo now. No, it won't be that bad, I promise. Stick around. I just wanted to remind you that next Friday, October 20th, Ono will be hosting a hangout with Ché Martin live on Zoom. So you can join that if you like. It's usually like a small group of adult improvers. So yeah, it feels like you're just having a chat with your friends, if all of your friends love chess. I personally think that Ché is an absolute legend. He's very funny and he's a real joy to hang out with. So yeah, don't miss out on the chance to hang out and sign up for the Patreon. You can do that at patreon.com/theonozone. There's a free 7-day trial available, so you can just try it out. And, no worries if you don't like it. Just go ahead and try for free. Because as a member of the Onozone Patreon community, there are Zoom hangouts every other week. So if you do like it, you can stick around. And then you'll also get lots of other benefits, like submitting questions for podcast guests and all of that. So what else? Well, if you're not on the Onozone newsletter yet, that's the first thing you should go do right now, so we can keep you in the loop about all things adult chess that Ono is doing, and you'll get a reminder when a new podcast episode or a new blog post is out. And if you want, you can also download a free study plan template or a list of recommended chess books that Ono has made for you. You can find all of that on theonozone.com. And whilst you're there, you can also book a free trial lesson with Ono if you're interested in his coaching, or if you found Ché's encouragement to hire Ono as a chess coach inspiring. If you haven't done so yet, also make sure to follow Ono Another Chess podcast on your favorite podcast app, wherever you're listening now, because episodes are being released every other Friday. And yeah, it really helps us if you follow and if you want to leave a 5-star rating, because it lets more people find this podcast. And since this is like episode 3, we're really just in the beginning stage of this podcast adventure, and we definitely like to reach as many people as we can, like as many chess lovers as we can. So make sure to rate and review if you get a chance, and thank you very much for that. Now, finally, if you want to contact us directly, you can do so at info@theonozone.com, or follow Ono on Lichess or X. Well, I think it's still Twitter, but let's say X. He's at the Onozone on all platforms, and all the links are also in the show notes as always. And I'm excited, to share all these cool guests that will be on Ono Another Chess podcast very soon. But we'll keep it a secret just a little bit longer. And the next episode will drop on Friday in 2 weeks. And in the meantime, I wish you all the chess.